You're listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense with your host, Doug Thorpe. Here's Doug.
Well, hello again, everyone. This is Doug Thorpe, and you're listening to another episode of Leadership Powered by Common Sense. We're the show that tries to take your business challenges and break them down into smaller bite-sized chunks that are easy to understand and clear sight from point A to point B in the journey you might be upon. My guest today is someone who's going to help us think about digital transformation. I think the phrase has become one of the classic business buzzword bingo challenges. And I think often when terms and terminology gets relegated to that, people start losing their focus on it. But I know in my journeys, digital transformation is still a challenge for some. It's still an initiative that others are seeking. So let's figure it out today. My guest is Mike Peterson. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Doug. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So as mundane as it might sound, let's level set. Let's talk about your definition of digital transformation. What does that really mean for a business?
Yeah, digital transformation is is one of those buzzwords, like you said, and I think it really boils down to leveraging technology to the best extent possible. So it's not the same for every company. You're going to have very large organizations that spend tens of millions of dollars every year on technology, and on the other hand, you're going to have small businesses that might spend $50 a month on technology. But it's really about thinking about things differently, so we're not automatically going to paper, to printing things out, to walking documents across the hall to get them signed by someone else before they're scanned and printed off and signed by someone else. Nowadays, there's technology for everything, and there's also AI that is improving so incredibly rapidly. It's absolutely impressive, and so there's a way to leverage technology to build efficiencies, to enhance your process, no matter what scale that is, and it's just leveraging it to the best extent possible for your business.
Well, as you were describing that, I was walking down memory lane in my mind, thinking about advents and evolutions of technology. And I go back long enough that I was on the forefront of what at the time was digital capture. Instead of putting giant paper files in a huge piece of real estate somewhere, we started scanning and digitizing. And even federal law in the U.S. was changed to allow and recognize electronic signature as defensible, supportable. That moved forward to big data. People started talking about data lakes and data mining, and people kind of ran off the reservation with capital spend on figuring out what that meant for their business. And about the time that sort of stabilized and some good tech solved that challenge, here we're confronted now with AI and all the rapid expansion and change. And I can attest, even in my own personal experience, the quality and veracity of AI output has rapidly increased from when I first started experimenting with it just a little over a year ago. In my own work, I've seen a marked change in the viability of the output that I can generate. So, trying to think where to begin with this, really. You have written a book and talked about the impact that this digital transformation has on leadership. So can you summarize real quickly some of the key impacts that you've either experienced or observed?
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning the book. I just recently put out My new book, Leading in the Age of Digital Disruption, came out in April, and it's really about how to lead in the modern age, how to take traditional leadership capabilities that have been around for decades and how to translate them for the modern world. I've had a lot of conversations with people about, how do we lead with this new technology? Do we replace some of our people with AI as people turn over in the organization naturally? And I think the answer is still no. Like you've said, AI has improved exponentially over the last 4 years. But we're still at a point where I believe very strongly still in human-centered leadership. While there is a lot of technology around, AI is still a little bit of an unknown, right? You don't have 100% accuracy, so you still have to do some fact checking. It's not going to be error free. It's very hard to validate either in a quality environment like the pharmaceutical industry or for public companies doing financial audits. It's very hard to validate AI systems, and so it's still really important to really invest in the people of your organization, but make sure that as you're leading them, you're supporting them with what I call servant leadership, but it's really a kind of a modern take on that, and that's supporting them with the right technology, making sure that that we're arming our employees with the tools that they need to be successful. Still salaries and benefits are the most expensive line item for most companies, and you think about a ChatGPT enterprise license being $200 a month, and like, oh gosh, that's so expensive. But it's only a quarter of a percent of the total cost of that employee, and so adding those licenses to give them access to AI within your environment is so incredibly valuable. So there's lots of things to do there, but I very much am in line with what I've read about your common sense leadership model, and still really being focused around the humans in your organization.
Yeah, I still do believe, and I think some research that's already starting to emerge is telling us from a leadership lens, you have to double down on the human-centric element with all of this chatter and perhaps noise going on about AI and what it is or is not going to do, and how far is a company going to delve into it. I think that creates an immediate shockwave in your workforce. If they even hear that the C-suite is entertaining AI, people panic. Your A-player rock stars dust off their resumes, they ramp up their LinkedIn, and they'll take the calls they get for new opportunity. And your other folks are just nervous and concerned. So even if you want to launch an AI or further digital transformation initiative, I think you have to double down on that human-centric connection and explanation of what is going to happen and what are the possibilities. I wanted to mention the other two elements of digital change that I have helped clients work through, and I continue to see the struggle on, is that number one, implementing something like either AI or just further digital enhancement. You in the green room, we were talking about going from paper to digital. If there has to be a piece of paper at the center of a transaction, at what point can it be captured and conveyed for the rest of the process without handing off the paper, and truncate the paper as fast as you can, as soon as you can? Well, projects like that represent change. And, we're all aware that us human beings, we don't like change for the most part. And when you as a leader in an organization, you stand up and you say, "Hey, team, I got this great deal. We're gonna put scanners at every workstation, and as soon as that customer ticket comes in, you're going to get to scan it, and it'll go from there." Well, now you invoke problem number one is change management and getting people to adapt. But then you also invoke change two, or I should say issue two, that is the generational propensity to either like the idea or not like the idea. And as you were talking, I had a client, I thought about a client that I've been talking with that her company is trying to go digital on what has been an incredibly paper-based contract management process. And the system is wonderful by all accounts. The younger folks are jumping all over it and they're into it, but she's got older people on her team that have been doing this job for literally 20 years, some of them, and they're not getting it. They're not buying it. They're pushing back. They're finding every excuse and opportunity to fight the change. So, what say you on all of that?
Yeah. I love talking about change, and um, I love the way you phrased it in the beginning, and I have a slightly different spin on this. One of my early mentors in my career um, came in kind of unexpectedly to cover a leave of absence, and she had a lot of ideas to bring into the organization. And she said, um, "Everyone loves change, but they love it in a different way than you think, right? They say change is great, but the truth is, uh, change is good, but why don't you go first? Like I'd like you to change, but I don't really want to change myself. I don't want to change my behaviors." And that's been in my head since kind of since the beginning. Change is really difficult. You have this inertia that wants to stay where it is, and getting people to change their behaviors is really a fine science. And I'm personally a really big fan of the ADKAR model. I don't know if you've heard of this. It's really designed to help companies through change management. And ADKAR is an acronym. It stands for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So as you're thinking about going through a project, you need to kind of ask yourself these questions and go through each of these steps, right? Is there awareness around what the problem is? So what are the challenges that we're seeing? What are some possible solutions? Is there a desire to fix this problem, right? If there's no desire to fix the problem, then you're probably not going to be successful trying to change it. So it's really important to build that desire. If the employees don't have it, show them what's in it for them, how it's going to save them time, make them more money, make the company more profitable, whatever it is. Making sure that desire is built in, and then do we have the knowledge to get us there, to advance this project? Oftentimes, training is a huge aspect that's missed in an organization. I just spoke with someone at a very large 60,000 employee company, and we were talking about how the company is leveraging AI. And they have a small pilot of 20,000 employees that were given licenses to use AI, and it was just drop shipped. There was no training, there was no communication. Just one day, they saw a little icon on their computer for Copilot, Microsoft's AI solution, and so we need to remember to take a step back and train people. What is the desired outcome? What are some use cases that you could potentially use this for in your own world? How do you access it? What are some prompts that you can use? How do you need to think about interacting with interacting with AI make sure that you can fact check things that don't seem right. And so uh, that knowledge is really important, and that's very related to ability. And then reinforcement is essentially giving that reward once the project is complete or the change initiative is complete. What are the rewards? How are we going to reinforce that behavior as we move on in time? Um, and so companies, I see these pitfalls all the time where these steps are kind of missed. They drop ship technology, they drop ship change. They send out a memo and expect them to, they snap their fingers and change is instantly propagated through the company. But it really
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. And the process needs to be managed very closely at every step of the process.
That consideration and your ADCAR model is very similar to a model that I use in coaching with my clients. It's I don't know that it's got a formal name, but it's a little bit of an algebraic looking equation. It's D times V times F has to be greater than R. And this was a formulaic solution for change management that a couple of college professors created many years ago. But in the equation, the R factor is the resistance to change. The general. You go first. I'll watch how you do, and then I'll get it. But the argument is that the product of the three other values, if they can be greater than R, you can overcome the resistance and proceed with your change. So the D factor is your in my equation, it's dissatisfaction, but I like adding the desire idea. If you
Yeah.
desire a change, you're going to get there. And then the V is the vision factor, painting this picture and being human-centric again, as we touched on at the start, telling your people, really spending time, not just doing the big town hall with the giant 60-page slide deck, but really leaning in and talking through the vision and what it is going to mean to each individual, each group, each team. And then the last letter, the F, is what you were talking about there significantly. That's first steps.
Hmm.
And I like your example in lieu of drop shipping the software license to somebody and saying, have fun. You actually map first steps. Well, let's have a training class on this tool that we're going to turn on Monday.
Yeah.
Let's show you how this works and what you can do with it. Let's have some test cases that we're going to let people work on and play with, kind of in a sandbox environment, so that you're not adversely impacting real data, but you're getting familiarity with usage and such. So I think in most of my experience in the whole landscape of change management, I think that first steps part is what is sorely missed and often forgotten. So you have the big town hall meeting, you announce the change and say, our go live date is October 1st. And everybody goes, okay. And, they leave the meeting scratching their head and they go to the water cooler and immediately start having the chatter that says, I don't see how we're going to do that in my team, and what about this
Yeah.
over here? What about that? Blah, 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 and it erodes the, the work you might have done to create some desire.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of similarities in our two approaches. And I think as you were talking, uh, a kind of a piece of digital transformation tying this together popped into my mind. One thing that I've also seen at a lot of companies when they're implementing new technology, they leave the back door open, so to speak. So we have this process where we're going to rip it out and we're going to implement this new piece of technology. And maybe we'll train on it. Maybe we'll do our part on that. But then the old process is still perfectly in place, and they kind of allow it to continue. and then all of a sudden you have two parallel processes running at the same time, and now you have no source of truth. The new system is now diverging from the old system, and you have some new process going through the old system that now doesn't match the data you migrated over to the new system. And so it's also really important to think about, as you're changing things, to make sure people can't accidentally do the wrong process. Thinking about that those first steps, or the reinforcement, right? We need to make sure that we're leading people towards the right process, rather than having both processes now set up, allowing for that ambiguity and uncertainty.
Yeah. Well, Mike, you have an interesting career journey. You've worked both in HR and IT, as I recall it. Which was first, chicken or egg, or how, or back and forth?
Well, so my very first job in either was actually in college. I worked for the Geek Squad at Best Buy. So I had the white dress shirt with the clip-on tie, doing computer repair. And technology has always been a personal passion of mine. And but my first really kind of corporate career job was in HR. But I really credit my experience with technology in how quickly my career advanced. So when I joined a small 600-person company that was really rapidly growing to 3,000 employees, we had offices in something like 80 different countries. Um, my job was kind of to go around the HR department and implement technology around paper process. And once we started expanding into new countries, it was to travel over to that country and really integrate them into our technology and our process. And I later left to be the head of HR of a much smaller 60-person company that grew to about 500, and implemented a lot of really cool technology for the HR department. And the leadership team eventually said, well, this is really cool. This technology is awesome. Can you do this for the rest of the company and take over leadership of IT? And at the time, the IT department was outsourced to a managed service provider. And I said, yeah, I love technology. I'd love to give this a shot. And it was obviously a great opportunity to learn a new skill. And we eventually grew the IT team to about 10 full-time employees and another 20 or so contractors. And the more I really dug into leading an IT department, the more I realized that uh, if you manage HR and IT together for an organization, it is exponentially more powerful than running IT and HR separately with the
Hmm.
kind of the sum of their parts. There's a lot of similarities in how we manage the function from a human-centric perspective, right? You think about implementing leadership development and really good performance management practices is very, very similar to how you implement new technology and how you build efficiencies within technology in an organization. And so having both of these functions work together. So we often would have HR and IT meetings. And in the beginning, the team would say, why do I need to listen to all this HR stuff? This has
Apples and
nothing to
oranges,
do. Yeah, this has
Yeah.
nothing to do with my role. And the HR people are like, why do I have to listen about these cybersecurity patches? Like this does not make any sense. And the more that we started really getting integrated into each other's business, the more it really started to click to people that, wow, like our job is to support the business and help add value. And we're adding value through people and technology. And as we go forward, these two pieces are going to be more and more intertwined as more and more advanced technology starts coming out and becomes a part of we do every day.
Yeah. I love that idea. And as you were describing that, I'm thinking there were a couple of instances I can think of in my own career journey, either directly with a company or in my consulting days, where I saw organizations that maybe hadn't done that formally, but they had begun a better tightening of the connection between IT and personnel. And I agree. I mean, those are classically support functions that, number one, they come under severe scrutiny when the economy tightens and companies are feeling margin squeeze. They inevitably take a hard look at both HR function and tech function to see if they can make some cuts. And HR suffers training cuts. If you're a training professional, you're on a yo-yo string in most cases. And similar to some of the IT talent that's out there, I think they all can attest. I live in the Houston area, and we were home base for the old original Compaq Computer Company. And I got to know a lot of people that had worked for Compaq, and I had one very good friend who was a quality control guy.
Mhm.
And he said Compaq had a terrible reputation for adding and deleting quality control depending on how the margins were doing. And ironically, as soon as margins tightened, they would release the quality control guys, and they were surprised that their DOA count rose, and they were doing all these replacements and refunds, further eroding the margin. And it's like, don't you get it? If we had quality control, we could improve that delivery number. But it was what it was.
Yeah.
Well, as you've seen that happen, what are some of the other things, the synergies that come from that connection?
Yeah. So I think as we move forward in the age of AI, I think there's an ability to leverage technology in leadership. So one of the neat ideas uh, that I've been working on with my book is kind of the next step. So I released the book in April, and this is really more about the philosophy. So it's a two-part book, thinking about a hypothetical story that takes people through kind of a leadership transformation that's fun and engaging and exciting to read. And then the second half is more of a kind of a textbook style. Here are the competencies and the philosophies that make this book make you a successful leader. And in the beginning, I was thinking about how uh, how can we then implement this in people's organizations. I was planning on writing a second book, and this would be more of a workbook style book where people could take notes in it, and it would have kind of a step-by-step plan of how do you as an individual implement these philosophies in your specific organization. But as I was thinking about it, I I thought, like uh, how can I leverage my own kind of model that I preach, and how can we leverage technology rather than putting out another book in a sea of millions of books? And so the idea was to actually leverage technology. So we're building a essentially an AI coach bot that is an expert in my book, Leading in the Age of Digital Disruption. So we have this large language model that's been trained on my book that I've been working with over the past 3 months to really narrow in its focus, and we'll be able to have this um, product for essentially people to subscribe to that will be essentially a leadership coach in their pocket. And so it really is this kind of combination of HR and IT coming together. So rather than having, like someone reads the book and then they say, well, gosh, I have this and this challenge. What do I do? Okay, I need to flip to chapter 4 in the workbook and see kind of what workshops or what conversations I need to have based on this challenge. And instead, they can type into our chatbot, I'm the history, what's happening, what are the challenges, and using the training that we've given it in my book, it'll essentially give them a roadmap of how to solve some of these challenges in real time, used kind of through my voice. It's almost scary how much this thing sounds like me, because it really is neat. So there's kind of individual cases like this, but I think as we start to see AI advance more, there's going to be more technology kind of spilling into the realm of leadership, and where previously kind of HR and IT were just very separate. And of course there was overlap, but you would think about workshops and offsites and coaching and one-on-ones to really enhance leadership, where you think of technology and data and reporting on the IT side. And so I think these worlds are going to start to blend together more and more. And I think that shift is going to happen very quickly. So it's pretty fascinating.
I agree with you. I'm seeing that same evolution in a lot of the things I've had an opportunity to do, and we don't really have time in today's episode to get further into that. But Mike, tell folks the best way to get a hold of you if they're interested in knowing more about your work.
Yeah, you can find my website at apexconsulting.partners. You can also find me on LinkedIn. It's probably my most active social media. Feel free to send me a note on either platform, and would love to have a conversation.
Awesome. Well, as always, folks, we will have those links in the show notes. You can go there and click the links and get over to see Mike. But one last time, Mike, thanks for sitting in. Really appreciate your insights.
Great. Thanks so much, Doug.
Well, I do want to remind everyone we have a video version of this show over on YouTube, channel by the same name, Leadership Powered by Common Sense. Hop over there, check out the archives, give us your comments and thoughts and feedback. We'd love to hear from you. If you need to get a hold of me for your own leadership development journey, go to my website at dougthorpe.com and click on any of the links, the resources we've got there. Would love to chat with you. But I think with that, we're done. We're going to say goodbye. Go out there, make it a great day.
You've been listening to Leadership Powered by Common Sense, hosted by Doug Thorpe. If you would like to know more about the coaching and advisory services he provides, visit dougthorpe.com.